You're listening to the We Are Libertarians podcast network. Find all of our shows at wearelibertarians.com.
Can I have your attention, please? Yes, hi, Wanda Sykes here. You ever think about all the nicknames we have for breasts? Boobs, tatas, the girls, chesticles, bubbies. Heck, you might even have your own nickname for them. And yet, even though they get so much attention, they're still so ignored when it matters most. What's up with that? Well, on February 9th, tune in to see why I'm talking so much about breasts and visit yourattentionplease.com to learn more.
Welcome to the We Are Libertarians 2020 presidential candidate series. We're going to meet one today. We've been doing the debates, but we have a new candidate in the ring. This is Max Abramson. Max, how are you doing today?
Hanging in there.
All right. Well, good to hear. Max, thank you so much for joining the show, talking with us, making the time, and throwing your hat into the ring. This first part here, we ask the candidates the same questions every time. You'll get kind of a mix of questions during the debate. You don't know about them ahead of time. These are all pre-screened, pre-listed questions, really just so we can do an apples-to-apples comparison between all the other libertarian candidates, because we want to hear how they differ, and so the best way to do that is to ask the same questions and then see where the splits are. So let's get started. My first question, this is the only one that's not going to involve politics, so really get it out of your system here. But tell me about yourself personally, just everything outside of the political realm, anything that you would want voters or people to know about you.
Well, I worked for about 10 or 12 years as a merchant mariner and suffered a back injury, so I had to do a career change. I now work in road construction, but I also do work on the side in software development. So those are two probably the least exciting professions you can do. Road construction is just being out there in the hot summer and trying not to get hit by all the people who are busy trying to get home and watch reruns of Matlock. No, that's true.
That's I tell you what, Matlock was a favorite of my grandparents. It was kind of like the SVU of their time, and so
Perry Mason and Raymond Burr, who played Perry Mason, and I guess he owned an island at one point. And he was interviewed, and they said that he won every single case except early in the first season. He had one show where they lost a case. He was defending somebody, and his client was found guilty. And they received 35,000 fan letters saying, "Don't do that." So people were so upset with that episode because it had an unhappy ending. And so they could never put on an unhappy ending again. Everyone had to be acquitted from then on.
Oh, wow. I don't think Dick Wolf has ever once given me a happy ending. It's just a tale of two audiences, I guess. So let's get into it. What's your liberty journey story? You've actually had a serious swing in that recently, but let's hear your history, just your journey towards libertarianism. So few people are born into the concept of liberty, so just how did you find your way there?
Well, I wasn't born into it. I think I must have been 4 or 5 years old when my older brother asked questions about property rights, and one question kind of really stuck out. He asked if you could put barbed wire and minefields and all kinds of other things on your own property if it's your own property. And we lived in an apartment at that time, and I didn't understand how apartments worked. There's the rent is theft crowd, and we, I hear some people laughing at them, but I really like some of the arguments that they use, even if I don't agree with their end conclusion. But we thought of our backyard as our property, and so I was maybe 4 or 5 years old. I had just seen some of my first World War II movies with John Wayne and the other guys, and he asked that question, can you put a minefield on your own property if it's your own? And that really got me thinking, asking really difficult questions. And if you really think that through, it opens up kind of all the complicated questions of common law, all the issues of what you're allowed to do and how you interact with your neighbors. And it's not something simple where you just say, no, you can't because you endanger other people. There are a lot more issues going on questions of reasonable use of your own land and unreasonable use.
Awesome. And just kind of everything sprung from conversations like that?
That, and then when I was in high school, I just by complete accident found a a worn out book called Free to Choose, a personal statement by Milton and Rose Friedman. And I had been really thinking about economics in terms of how would you organize all economic activity within a country to be the most efficient? And I personally wanted the least government control. And Milton Friedman, of course, is famous for the Chicago school versus the more famous Austrian school. But they really delved into their philosophy first. And after that, I started, of course, reading a lot of quotes and letters by Thomas Jefferson. And then that later, of course, turned me on to Benjamin Franklin and Frederick Bastiat and a number of others. And I've read a lot of the books and philosophy on classical liberalism or libertarianism. That was before I got into the Libertarian Party, of course.
Yeah. So what we like to do is we like to start at the top and then work you down from there. So we're going to assume that you've won the presidency for our first few questions here. And so these questions, all three the same. We're just going to have them in order. Biggest problem facing America and how you would fix it, then second and third. But let's start number one, biggest problem that you see facing America, and what does the Max Abramson presidency do for you?
Breakdown of the family, same thing that I tried to say during the Johnson Weld campaign. Little side story, I was the legislative sponsor at the New Hampshire State House for the Johnson Weld ticket. We had about 600 people come out, and someone, I don't want to name names, but I think that it was the campaign manager, made a decision right beforehand. It's a long trip out there. There was a lot of work setting it all up. And I was just going to speak literally for a minute on the breakdown of the American family, because it's been the biggest issue for me personally, and it's one that we really struggle with in the legislature. There's that contribution, the corruption of the family courts, and the easy divorce, and people throw a lot of different things at it. But I think it's really economic stress that causes most of it. It now takes two incomes to support a family, and when both parents are working and neither one can really take time off, kind of wears them out. So I always say create living wage jobs, not welfare. I think the welfare system and its costs have driven poverty up. They've contributed to the breakdown of the family. They discourage people from marrying, and the series of welfare cliffs that they put in place. I grew up in public housing. My family was on welfare for a couple of years about the time that my father died, and I saw up close how it contributed to the breakdown of the family unit.
Yeah, family is one of those that I think people just don't consider as a political issue when they don't see how the politics gets involved with it and interferes with it. So let's talk about issue number 2 and what your administration would do to take care of it.
It's the not just the current war in Middle East, Syria, Afghanistan, or any specific country, but the ongoing wars in the Middle East. They just seem to be escalating, and ever since September 11th, every terrorist attack, every bombing, every uprising by insurgents is being used as the excuse to attack and invade another country and another country, and it's turned into an 18-year-long military conflict there. When I had to decide, I really have pushed this decision kind of down the road a little bit and procrastinated a bit. But when I had to decide for myself as a person, do I really want to put my name out there and be exposed to all the criticism and the amount of work that goes into it? What really drives you to do that? And it's bringing the troops home. A lot of the guys that I was in Army ROTC with, and a lot of the guys on merchant ships, we took a lot of military hardware, but a lot of military crew out to the Middle East. And my thoughts are always with them and their safety, and wanting them to be able to come back home, be with their families and their communities. It's not just a matter of cost, the trillions and trillions of dollars for their long-term medical and disability costs. My concern is that they're separated from their families for so long.
Sure. Very economic and human cost on that issue. And let's talk about problem number 3 and what Max Abramson can do for the average American person.
It's the national debt and the entitlement crisis. Current federal, state, and local spending, I look at all three as public spending. It's about $8 trillion a year. And that might seem huge compared to a $22 trillion a year economy. But if you imagine the biggest parts of that, not just for federal, but also in our state budgets, I work as I'm a state legislator. I'm on my second term now as a Libertarian state legislator. And the biggest rising cost also for the state, for school districts, for towns, is rising healthcare costs. Rising healthcare costs and rising costs of college, insurance, liability, those types of things are driving up the entitlement crisis. They're driving up the cost of healthcare. And as bad as the $22 trillion national debt is, it's actually fast rising towards $23 trillion. Total unfunded entitlement obligations, pension fund obligations, and infrastructure costs are over $70 trillion now, according to a USA Today front page story. And that's a couple of years old, so it's going to be much larger than that now. To put that in perspective, people can't imagine what trillions and trillions of dollars are, imagining that amount of money. So I explain it in terms of it's roughly the size of, it's about $300,000 for every man, woman, and child in the country. Those are your total obligations that just Congress, just the federal government has attached to you. And I don't think that there's any possible way that we can manage that. Of course, the solution is to get back to constitutionally limited government, keep the basics, the retirement benefits, veterans benefits, disability benefits, Social Security, and Medicare benefits. But I think it's pretty clear that all of the other entitlement programs and subsidies have to be somehow phased out.
Sure. I mean, when you can't afford it, you can't afford it, right? So let's talk about I got to take the presidency away from you. Let's pretend you've won the Libertarian primary. And so what we're going to do is talk about your strategy as far as appeal to the American voters. Because you're just going to have a tough time making it on libertarian support alone. And so we're going to kind of talk about how you appeal to the left and the right. So let's start with social issues, and let's start with the left. You've got the concern over, gay rights, and this specifically socially, and we'll get to the economics in just a minute here. But, you've got all the different issues, the equality issues, treatment, the workplace, how minorities get treated, and they're concerned about the culture around that. Why would a socially left person vote for you instead of their given Democratic candidates?
Well, if you look at tactical voting, of course, there are 20 states that now always go Republican. There are 14 states that always go Democrat, and there are only 16 battleground states left. So right there, the 20 states that are expected to always go to Trump or always go Republican, I think that those are pretty easy to pick up just on talking about LGBT rights. That's a simple libertarian versus Trump, or Abramson versus Trump calculus. And I think that issues like the death penalty, I spoke on the floor recently in favor for the repeal of the death penalty, and the repeal of the death penalty passed by one vote, my vote, in New Hampshire, and we were able to accomplish that. And I think that people underestimate the importance of that. That's a very important issue because of the growing awareness of wrongful convictions. I've been a long-time 100% supporter of LGBT rights, including the lesser-known ones like hospital visitation and bereavement rights, as Governor Bill Weld had to stick his neck out as governor of Massachusetts and do as an executive order, do it on his own with opposition from a Democrat legislature. So the death penalty, protection of civil liberties, privacy, internet privacy, phone privacy, email privacy, a lot of social liberals have brought those up as issues that they're concerned about and are very near and dear to them. And I think that more and more social liberals are really starting to question in the 14 entrenched Democrat states, the safe blue wall states, which are about 240 electoral college votes. I think they're starting to question whether or not the Democrat Party is really a free speech party, or is it just another talking points party? I think that political correctness and the loss of free speech on the Democrat side is really driving away a lot of social liberals from that party.
Yeah, totally agree. So let's talk about the socially the right. They're very concerned. Obviously, they've seen church rights erode away. We've seen some of their outreach efforts fail. They do have concerns about immigration, their social issues like that. we've got Donald Trump in office. Why would they support a Max Abramson instead of Donald Trump, who it will likely be? I mean, I guess hypothetically maybe Bill Weld, but whoever the Republican is, why would they want to support you instead of the Republican candidate?
Well, again, that's how you target the 14 safe blue wall states, the Democrat states. There you've got a tactical voting comes into play. In other words, if you live in the Northeast, states like Illinois, New Mexico, Colorado, any of the West Coast states or Hawaii, none of those 14 states ever goes Republican. And I think that just having a path to the White House, even an outside long shot chance, I think that having somebody who's a longtime supporter of Second Amendment, kind of a Ron Paul type of libertarian who supports secure borders, although I'm pro-immigration, but I support secure borders. And my experience on the House Pro-Life Caucus, I'm pro-adoption, meaning that the exceptions that I support, I think that what we're trying to promote actually is adoption. And I think that that's a strong enough position where a lot of pro-life voters will kind of bite the bullet and support a libertarian, even though they may like Trump's most recent positions. If Trump doesn't have a chance of winning in any of those 14 states, that you're much better off as a social conservative supporting a libertarian who at least isn't far off to the left and pro-abortion. I think that my stance is opposing taxpayer funding of abortion and Planned Parenthood, and my consistent voting record should appeal to those folks.
Great. So let's shift to the economic side. We need to appeal to, you got the economic left. Classically, these are people who are worried about corporations doing evil corporate things. You've got the pay gap. What would you say to somebody who's maybe looking at voting for a Democrat or who is a registered Democrat, and why you might be better to represent their interests?
Also, the 28 safe Republican states, I think that they'll vote tactically for us. The messaging there is, as a matter of fact, not to go off on a side, but about half of Democratic voters say that they would support middle-class tax cuts. More than half of Democratic voters say that they'd like to reduce government spending, including not just wasteful government spending, but really downsized government. The vast majority of Democratic voters have said that they support term limits. A majority support a balanced budget amendment. The vast majority, more than 2/3, support tools like the line item veto to cut government spending. So when people say economic liberals, they may be suspicious of the collusion between big business and big government, but at the same time, they don't necessarily trust big government or think that reckless spending and reckless borrowing is the solution to curb the power of Wall Street. What we've seen with the FDP in Germany is they take a pro-market rather than pro-business approach. And as long as they've stuck to pro-market, or the economics of principle, sticking to free markets, free trade, and consistently keeping government out of the marketplace, consistently opposing corporate welfare, consistently opposing corporate bailouts, or state-protected monopolies, or any of that cronyism that you see in state and national politics, that they will come over and they will support a candidate who is principled, even if they might prefer either a social democracy or even nationalizing industries. When it actually comes time to actually vote, when they're seeing more and more of these establishment Democrats who are even more in the back pockets of Wall Street than sometimes their Republican opponent, then I think that the third party vote is the only way. And especially for center-left anti-establishment voters, we've seen them come over consistently, and that's actually become one of our bigger voting bases when we're running an active campaign.
Yeah, you bet. Let's shift it over to the economic right now. This is pretty obvious. The debt's gotten big. You've already addressed that, but we're talking. They see employers' rights dwindling. A lot of just economic problems with the welfare state. What would you have to say if they're thinking about voting for Donald Trump? Why would they go for you instead?
Of course, that's the small business community, economic conservatives, but some of them are pro-immigration. Our pro-immigration approach, I think, is works much better for them. Donald Trump said that he was only going to go after illegal immigration, and probably 99% of Americans agree with that. But when he's actually gotten in office, he's cut down visas. He's cut down, cut down visas for students and the spouses of green card holders. He's cut down on migrant workers, and very, very few of those jobs would have gone to American citizens. I think 8% of spouses of green card holders, if that. So you have a lot of businesses, a lot of industries that depend very much on immigration. And of course, half the new businesses started in this country are started by first and second generation immigrants. But the National Small Business Association polled their members, and of those who were Republican, only about half really felt that the Republican Party, the National Republican Party, they like what they see from Republican legislators. When they look at the National Republican Party, only about half really feel that they're being responsive to the concerns of the small business community. They really need, not so much tax cuts and loan guarantees and the like, but what they really need is a balanced budget. They're talking about the need for entitlement reform, regulatory reform, ending Obamacare mandates, getting healthcare costs down, which we hear about in the legislature all the time. I'm a member of the House Business Caucus. But what they're really talking about are getting down the business taxes. Remember, small business owners get hit twice with whatever the tax burden is. Once the property taxes and the whole series of taxes on your home, but you also have a shop or a small business somewhere, and you're getting hit twice. And then you're getting hit with some type of business profits tax from the state. Then you get hit with sometimes corporate income tax and a capital gains tax on your business. And so a lot of small business owners with revenues well below 1 million a year and maybe only a handful of employees are already being hit with effectively 50 to 70% tax rates when they start adding up all the hidden taxes that go with it. And that's really, it's really atrocious, and it's something where they put their whole lives into it, and their revenues are all being eaten up by taxes and regulatory fines and litigation and rising healthcare costs. Like rising electricity costs are a big concern for manufacturers. And all of those have to be addressed. Energy costs are a major concern for the business community.
Oh, yeah. We had Joe Paschal on recently to talk about a lot of the energy problems and a lot of the issues going on there. So I hate to do this to you, but now we got to take away your nomination. Let's get you through a Libertarian primary as a freshly registered Libertarian. We got to get you through the nomination. So we're going to go left, right, bottom up. So let's talk about that Libertarian left. You got kind of they'd say the Libertarian Socialists, but really just the Libertarians that are really focused on the social issues. You got the Mike Shipleys and them, they're very passionate. A lot of members of the Audacious Caucus come from there. What is your tactic for pulling in those voters to make them support you when it comes to securing the nomination?
Mike Shipley is a great friend. I have a lot of terrific conversations with him. He always has something interesting to say, but he gave me a bottom up, not a pin, but a little attachment. I've been a delegate twice before at national conventions, and I said, bottom up unity, what is that? And I'm used to the Nolan chart. When I joined the Libertarian Party in 1996, although I didn't start paying dues until 2000, still got my old, I've still got my card that I bring with me that I flash to show off my my street cred. He said bottom up unity. I said, what is bottom unity? I thought we were the top, because I'm used to the Nolan chart. And of course the Nolan chart, every time I've taken the world's smallest political quiz, I'm right in that top box.
Me too.
And that's what I'm kind of accustomed to. And then somebody flipped it around, and now it's upside down, and I'm trying to turn my head sideways and squint, and I'm like, how does this? Why not just rotate it back around and put the good guys up at the top?
Yeah, I think if you still have the eye side with quiz, they still do the Nolan chart where the Liberty one's at the top.
And the world's smallest political quiz, advocates for smaller government, and most of the groups I think still stick with the good old fashioned Nolan chart.
Right. So cool. All right. Well, so you're already friends with Mike Shipley. That goes a long way. Let's talk about your appeal to the libertarian right. These mostly, I think some people throw ANCAPs in there, but a lot of paleo conservative. I think the Mises Caucus isn't even afraid to call themselves the libertarian right. So these are passionate. They have a lot of delegates. How do you appeal to them?
Well, remember, some folks on the libertarian right aren't really even philosophically libertarian like we are. So we would say what you choose to put into or take out of your own body is your own choice. So obviously, what you choose to eat, drink, smoke, what you do with your own body, sex laws, these types of things. And some on the right tend to say, well, maybe for the federal government, but we still hear them come in on the social issues at the state legislature, and you've got I hate to single anyone out, but certain Southern Republican legislators are trying to pass bans on birth control pills and things like that. That's really none of the government's business. The libertarian philosophy, if you really want to get right down to it, is all the decisions that affect you are your own, and how you choose to spend your own money, of course, is your own decision. Spend, save, invest, or donate as you see fit. But when it comes to personal freedom, there are some people on the right, and especially some types of social conservatives and prohibitionists who, yeah, they might agree with us on the national level and they might vote for us on the national level. When it comes down to state legislature, they like 50 different solutions to 50 different states, but the solution that they want for their state might be, I would consider it a little bit nosy, or maybe even comes across as a little bit of a busybody. If I want to go gamble my money away, then that's my choice. If I want to stay out until 3 o'clock in the morning at the bars, that's my choice. And what an adult chooses to do with their own body, among other consenting adults, is really up to them.
Yeah, totally agree. All right, well, let's talk about the libertarian. Let's start with the minarchists. This is the bulk of the Libertarian Party, I would say, is the small government. We agree, defense, fine. I think that's even in our planks, is to say the one area the government should be maybe allowed to be in is the area of defense. What would your appeal be to kind of the minarchist, moderate sort of libertarian?
I think our ability to sell constitutionally limited government to non-libertarians is probably the biggest appeal to minarchists. I think that minarchists generally tend to be more pragmatic, not just on government, but they tend to be pragmatic on politics. Although I think that when I've gone door to door and I've campaigned on the idea of just getting money, power, and decision-making back down to the local level and back to the people, taking care of problems at the local level, helping people at the local level, addressing addiction, education, homelessness, literacy issues, job training issues at the local level. Most people, I think that that's a pretty easy sell. And I think that you make the case, as Ron Paul did when he ran, for going back to the Constitution, really downsizing the federal government in order to get more accomplished through local churches, local charities, through the family, through local towns, local schools. I think that really sells well with the vast majority of Americans. And when people see that people really turned on to that idea, that it's more cost effective, it's less partisan, and most importantly, you know the person with whom you're dealing. You're not just institutionalizing hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people and running them through some cold-hearted federal bureaucracy. You're helping one person at a time in your local town.
Sure. And last, let's wrap up with the appeal to kind of the libertarian anarchist branch. This is definitely growing. A majority of our candidates even identify as a libertarian anarchist at the moment. These are they have a tough time even voting at all, right? Because this is a lot of voting is violence and assessing will. But if they do vote, it's got to be somebody who's principled and who is going to bring forward really ultimate freedom for them. What would your appeal be to kind of an anarchist-leaning person?
Way back when I first got in, I'm trying to think back. Maybe it was Libertarian Party of Washington State Convention in 2000. There were a handful of almost anarchists there, and they said they were voting tactically. And I tried to think of that in terms of like the movie Back to the Future. Back to the Future one, Michael J. Fox gets in the DeLorean and he goes back to good old 1955, the Eisenhower administration, before the war on drugs, before the war on crime, before the war on terror. This is kind of the Ron Paul message. Very, very small, very limited government, just handling things at the local level. And I think of the Libertarian Party as a DeLorean that can go back to good old 1955. Which is still in living memory, and it's a proven model of a very limited form of government that works. Now, we do have some members who'd like to go back to Back to the Future Part 3, good old 1885, the old Wild West days, and not even have to explain how to pay for roads and whatnot. And then you have a few people who would go back even to 1785, when there wasn't even a federal government there. Almost a true anarchist, at least as far as the federal government is concerned. Maybe you'd have states and counties and some other minimal institutions. But I think that we decided early on, and I think that this is the result of the Dallas Accord, which is, 1974. The party decided we're going to be a good old 1955 party. We're just going to go back to constitutionally limited government. If we ever make it, we may have to split. And you may then, once the American people are accustomed to constitutionally limited government, well, then at that point, we may need to split and break off some type of anarchist party that favors absolutely no government at all.
All right, yeah, there's a long storied history between anarchy and liberty, and I've gone down that rabbit hole a few times, but it is fascinating. Last two questions here, really just nuts and bolts questions. Do you have a plan in place to help you raise money? Do you have the time to campaign? Now, you've been a state representative before, so you know what a campaign involves. It's a little bit tougher as a libertarian. I think a lot of worry with some of the candidates we put forward is they never intend to leave the basement. So do you have a plan in place to visit conventions, drum up support, a fundraising strategy that would make it so that you'd be a viable candidate if you're selected?
Yes, and well, legislative campaigns are completely different from presidential campaigns. We saw Governor Johnson, Governor Weld tried to elevate their gubernatorial experience with the national, and national is a much more scrutiny. Someone running for governor can usually just run on, here's some ideas I have for reducing spending and reducing taxes, and both the two governors did a really terrific job when they were in that position. But the number one money raiser we've seen historically is if you have a chance of winning. And that's always been the biggest problem that we faced. It's killed us in congressional campaigns, great congressional and legislative campaigns. And the legislative campaigns, libertarian campaigns that we've seen do really well are taking advantage of something called tactical voting. Most libertarian candidates are only vaguely aware of it. You have to know the PVI number of your district partisan voter index. And basically the way it breaks down in a presidential campaign, as I said before, there are 14 states that now never go Republican. But yet back in, let's say, the days of Eisenhower and even earlier campaigns, Thomas Dewey and Wendell Willkie and so forth, those states, the northeastern states, especially New England and West Coast states, always went Republican every single year. And it was because it was a very different Republican Party. It was really just more dedicated to less government, figuring out how to keep costs down and reduce spending and taxes. And the National Republican Party has figured out that if they become even more socially conservative, more like the South, and maybe even right-wing populist like Donald Trump, they pick up more seats, more districts, and more votes down south, but they lose more in the Northeast and the West Coast. So they've kind of lost. They've lost that ability, and I think that the Libertarian Party can and should focus on, not just the safe Republican districts where we kind of take on a rhino here and there. We need to counterbalance that and also focus on the 14 safe Democrat states and the 170 entrenched Democrat House districts, and run an even campaign. For the presidency, those 20 entrenched Republican states are competitive for us. They're not competitive for Democrats. The 14 entrenched Democrat states are competitive for us. They're not competitive for Republicans. So if we run an organized campaign ahead of time and we make it clear that we're going to use this tactical voting approach, like they do in Canada, like they do in Britain, like they do in every other first past the post country, that while it may be a long shot, even having a 1 or 2 or 3% chance of winning the presidency brings in a whole lot more money than having zero chance and just trying to make the case for being a free educational campaign. I think that showing how we have some of the 14 states that don't go Republican, that they could go Libertarian, and having some of the 20 safe Republican states, especially the Rocky Mountain states, especially the Western states where we have large numbers of Libertarian members and voters and activists, and there's a lot of interest out there. And there's not a lot of campaigning by the Republicans. They just kind of put their name in and let the party do the work and let voter registration and the rest of it do the work and just carry them into office. I think that having a competitive race against Republican legislators and Republican members of Congress who've never really had to do anything but win a primary before would bring a lot of people out of the woodwork and boost voter turnout. I think that we'd pick up a few of those seats. But same thing for the presidential and for House of Representatives. It's stay away from the battleground states and the battleground districts, because we'll get outspent 1,000 to 1 there. The two parties spend about $4 billion altogether every election cycle on those battleground states, and they do virtually nothing for the remaining 34 states.
Right. All right. Well, to close, last question. How do people find out about you if they want to get involved or have a question for you or want to donate? Where's the best place to find you?
The best place that gets updated the most is my Facebook page, which is just Representative Max Abramson. We will be having the presidential one once we put that together and get more volunteers. We have a few volunteers already working. And also, of course, maxabramson.org. That's the campaign website that I've been using and has all the announcements and press releases if anybody's wants to go there for a link. maxabramson.org also has the link for donating. If you have Bitcoin Cash, or just want to send in a contribution, that's the best place to go to. But if you want to get involved through social media, it's Representative Max Abramson.
All right, Max, thank you so much for being on the show. We look forward to talking to you, getting to know you more. We've got an environmental debate coming up in less than 2 weeks here. We just look forward to seeing you on the stage. Again, welcome to the Libertarian Party and the Libertarian primaries, and enjoy yourself and keep spreading the message of liberty.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you so much. Again, we're Libertarians. Thank you so much. If you are a Patreon donor, we really appreciate it. It keeps us going. It keeps us in business. We recently had our most downloaded episode of all time, broke our 24-hour record and number of downloads, just all kinds of great stuff. We're just getting bigger than ever. So again, thank you so much if you're tuning in. Until next time, viewers, keep fueling the fires of liberty.